What will the Rams trade deadline play be, and could they make an offer for this game-changing cornerback? All that more coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, closing in on 20,000 subscribers. So if you haven't yet, join the party, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and if you want to support every episode, hit the like button and drop a comment down below. My name is Doug McCain. Friends call me DMAC. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've covered LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation, the LA Sports Report, and also the NFL Radio for Westwood One. Today I'm flying solo, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, will be back on Monday. We've got a jam-packed show. We are talking about the NFL trade deadline that is fast approaching, November 4th. Also, the most important games remaining on the Rams schedule. Some injury updates we'll get into. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Ramily, bye week. Not a lot happening, but we are still in the mix as always. And some of the big questions this bye week are, with the Rams being 5-2, will they consider going all in? Will we go back to the Les Snead F them picks era where you use some of that draft capital that they have stockpiled because they did trade out of the first round last year because the Falcons want to come up and get Pierce? The Rams, they did not have that guy they get up and go get, so they trade out. They got that extra pick, and there was a lot of talk, okay, that pick is to draft a quarterback in the 2026 NFL draft. All these quarterbacks at the college level, the Arch Mannings, Nussmeyers, really no one stood out. No one's really impressed. There's no generational quarterback, at least right now, that has made you feel like, oh, I have to have that guy. I have to do whatever it takes, picks now in the future, to find that quarterback that's going to be available. That guy just has not emerged. So the Rams are in a position where you look at the NFC, you got the Lions, you got the Eagles, you got teams, 49ers, teams out there for sure, the Packers. But the Rams, we know at this point, they're as good as anyone when they're on their game. They're a team that could be 6-1. They could even be 7-0. If it weren't for some blocked field goals, if it weren't for some bad execution at times, this is a team that's proven that they can play with the big boys in this league. And anytime that you look like you are close, there's always this temptation to go out there and find a piece that will take you over the top. And that's the conversation the Rams are in. Are you looking for a piece that takes you over the top, or do you have a defined need? Well, the first conversation would be geared towards the cornerback play. And in recent weeks, Darius Williams has been better. Emmanuel Forbes has been better. And you're going to get a Keller Witherspoon back later in the year. You had Sean McVay say after he broke his clavicle that he was going to probably be out for 12 weeks, so it's going to be an extended period of time. But the play has improved. The scheme that the Rams use with Chris Shula, it doesn't necessarily demand that you have elite cornerback play, but we've been getting questions in the comments. Tom Stevens asked me, DMAC, could we shock the world and go out there and trade for Sauce Gardner? Sauce Gardner, the cornerback for the New York Jets. And yes, Sauce Gardner, even on a bad Jets team, you know the kind of talent that he has, a big cornerback, 6'3", 200 pounds, 25 years old. You look at his grades on PFF, like I said, the PFF grades always have to take with a grain of salt. They have him ranked as the 22nd cornerback in the NFL. Is there anyone out there that thinks that Sauce Gardner is the 27th best cornerback in the NFL? I mean, based on his performance this year, fine. In that team, which is a dumpster fire, one of the worst organizations in all professional sports, the New York Jets. But if the Rams were to go after Sauce Gardner, I've seen trade packages out there, and I laugh a little bit because I've seen, give the Jets a second-round pick. Give the Jets a first-round pick. You do realize that the Jets just extended Sauce Gardner. They just gave him a new deal, a 4-year, $120.4 million extension that locks him up till 2030, and that made him the highest paid cornerback at that position in the league. They just did this deal this year back in mid-July. Now, that doesn't mean you can't trade someone that you just extended, but he's supposed to be a cornerstone of that franchise. Now, if they feel like Aaron Glenn has disappointed and they really want to just go to a down-to-the-studs rebuild and build to the draft and try to find different players that way, and you did want to trade Sauce Gardner, well, you were talking about at least 2 first-round picks. At least a first-round pick, but possibly 2 first-round picks to get someone of his caliber that just signed a new deal, and then you're taking on that contract as well. So I do think that there is a universe where the Rams do acquire a cornerback at the trade deadline. I certainly do. And in fact, there are rumors already swirling that they have been interested in adding a cornerback. Diana Rossini of The Athletic, she wrote in her recent piece, quote, "Meanwhile, the Bills and Steelers are in the receiver market, while the Ravens, Colts, Lions, and Rams are inquiring about corners, sources say." So that tells you right there that the Rams are, at the very least, doing their due diligence to add a cornerback. Could it be someone that's not a first-tier, top-tier guy like a Sauce Gardner? That is a possibility. And the truth is, hey, you can always get better even if you're a good team. I mean, this is from The Athletic. It says, the Rams came into the season expecting to be contenders and are 5-2. Matthew Stafford has thrown 17 touchdown passes to just 2 interceptions. And the last time he was playing at this level in 2021, the Rams famously went all in with an in-season trade for Von Miller, an in-season trade for and they added Odell Beckham Jr. I don't expect the same push this year, partly because the Rams still want to keep their 2 first-round picks to chase a quarterback of the future next spring, but I think they'll realize the limited window they have with Stafford and could look to help at outside cornerback or on special teams. So I think that's the problem with the current state of the sports media world is there's too many guys that are trying to cover the entire league and they don't know the ins and outs of each and every team. And you mentioned the quarterback thing. Yeah, the Rams could go out there and draft a quarterback. They should draft a quarterback because you only find elite quarterbacks really in the draft. These guys don't come available in free agency. The trade for Matthew Stafford was a exception, not a rule. But where the Rams are at as far as trades and using that first-round pick, it would have to be for a game-changing player, a guy that get them over the top. And even though he says, okay, Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr., who signed with the Rams, as good as that 21 team was, it was Von Miller, and everyone thought, he couldn't be traded, right? And they were able to pull off a trade for him. And Odell Beckham Jr., he had his impact as well, but it was Von Miller, Odell Beckham Jr., and Eric Weddle that took that team over the top. So as good as that 2021 team was, we know the formula for a Super Bowl for the Rams in this era, and that is put together a really nice regular season, show that you are worthy of mortgaging some of the future and parting way with some assets to go all in, acquire game-changing talent, and then go and win a Super Bowl. So the reason why I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again is because this has worked. And there's a lot of teams out there that have tried to employ this similar strategy, but they skip the part where they actually win the Super Bowl. The Rams have a track record of doing just this, so I think that they're going to maintain some flexibility. I've seen some other ideas out there. The Rams trading for a Derrick Henry. Go out there and get King Henry, right? Go out there and try to add at a position where you don't necessarily have a glaring weakness right now. You just extended a Kyren Williams, and although adding Derrick Henry is not a likely scenario, I think that it's important to point out the fact that the Rams are going to put themselves in a position to be opportunistic. And even though you're going to want to identify certain needs, and cornerback could potentially be one of those needs, if the right player becomes available, and the Rams are one of the few teams in the NFL that can provide the draft capital to go get that player, and then on top of that, they're a free agent destination that can get deals done in the future, and they're not afraid to spend. So that is certainly top of mind as well. I remember throwing out Jeffrey Simmons last week. If I'm the Rams, I'm just looking at game-changing players, and I'm not trying to have these hard and fast rules and just saying, oh, we're just trying to improve at positions that may be perceived as positions of need. No. Hey, if the right some houses you can't buy because they're not for sale, but if there's a house for sale on a block that I was driving down and I like the trees and I like the curb appeal, and even though I already have a nice house on a different street, if I'm looking to expand my portfolio and I've got the money to do it, and I like that street and I like driving by that house, if that house that I didn't know was going to be for sale becomes for sale and I like it enough, I'm going to put an offer in for it because I think that it'll pay off for me in the long run. So I want to keep an open mind at this trade deadline. And I certainly think that even as good as this Rams team is, with the fact that Matthew Stafford is having the year that he's having, and you're only essentially guaranteed this year and the next with Stafford, and that's not a guarantee, that's what gives you all the reason in the world to go out there and be aggressive. If Stafford was 25 and was under contract for 6 years, then I would think, okay, you just try to see what you can do with this group, and then if you win a Super Bowl, great. If you don't, you run it back next year. They don't have that many run it backs with this group, and I think they owe it to themselves to be aggressive and explore every single possible way you can improve this roster. And then coming up next, more trade talk, got some injury talk, and the most important games remaining on the schedule for the Rams after the bye week. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. This episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Bet a pick, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I'll say it again. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I love FanDuel. I use it all the time. I, of course, have a lot on the Rams this year. I had Stafford MVP, the Rams winning the Super Bowl, so I'm all in on the 2025 Los Angeles Rams. And I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. Lots of great stats and info over at FanDuel. And it makes watching football even more exciting. When you've got a little more something riding on the action, just a little something extra, it definitely makes it a little more intense. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, that's sad. Software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. By uniting your employees, teams, and departments in one system, Rippling removes the bottlenecks, busy work, and silos your software created. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access, it runs automatically and perfectly in sync. It's seriously simple to use, too, and it gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations as one, or just fill in the gaps in your software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now, you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. Learn more at rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNFL for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. And we're off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Also want to give a big shout out to all the everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Cannot thank you enough. And if you are new to the show, we've got lots of new viewers, lots of new listeners this year. Join the Everyday Listeners Club. That's where we drop an episode and you watch it, you listen to it, and then you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. Okay, here in our second segment, some injury news to get into. So we talked a little bit about Ahkello Witherspoon. The Rams are not expecting him back after the bye in the first couple of weeks, but we're inching closer to a return for him. And Ahkello Witherspoon is a guy that you're hoping, if you're the Rams, depending on when he could be back, well, you look at the injury and you say to yourself, okay, it is going to be about 12 weeks. So the return would be about week 14 to week 15. So if you're the Rams, you got the schedule lined up where if he comes back, it could be at a big moment in the season, because you look at week 14, week 15. My hope is if you get him back week 14 against the Cardinals, then he's ready to go for week 15 against the Lions, which is sure to be possibly one of the games of the year in the NFL. So we'll see how he performs and how he progresses, but that would be best case scenario. Now, the guy you are hoping to get back, of course, is Puka Nacua. He missed week 7 against the Jaguars, dealing with an ankle injury. The good news is it was nothing very serious, which was originally feared. People were saying it could be all kinds of different things. I don't even want to throw it out there. So the good news is they won without him. Guys got much-needed reps. Guys like Terrence Ferguson got their first touchdown. Mumfield got his first career touchdown. Devontae Adams got 3 touchdowns. So those guys are brimming with confidence now. Matthew Stafford is going to look to those guys if Puka Nacua isn't available. But Puka Nacua should be back for week 9 against the Saints next Sunday. So that definitely is a major boost, and that's going to be huge because you go out there, you get the Saints, you should win that game, and just like that, you're 6-2, and you're starting to feel really good about where your season is. Other interesting injury development, it's going to be Rob Havenstein. The right tackle's had a off year for the Rams. He's a veteran. He's been a rock for this franchise for a long time. It makes you wonder what's his status going to be and if that injury has impacted his play at all. Because Warren McClendon, he's done a solid job. He's been serviceable. He's not Rob Havenstein, though, when he's at his best. So makes you wonder if this time off will recalibrate Havenstein and he'll be ready for the stretch run, because they're not going to move off of him, especially in a year that could be his final one with the Rams. I think that Tyler Higbee's a different situation. I think the Rams would 100% be willing to limit his snaps and reduce his role with the emergence of a Terrence Ferguson. But Havenstein's a different story because he's still really good at that position when he's right, just hasn't had the best year to start things off for himself. So that's where they're at from the injury standpoint. And I said it before and I'll say it again. I mean, we really did see our life flash before our eyes with that Puka Nacua injury against the Ravens. I mean, we really did. And the fact that it appears to be a nothing burger and he just got a little banged up, I mean, that is the best case scenario. And even just giving a guy like that who had so many reps and snaps and receptions and just had such a massive impact on the game for the Rams in the first few weeks of the season and up until the injury against the Ravens in week 6, it's good to give him that in-season rest just to make sure that he's ready to go, because they're going to lean on him heavily for the rest of the season and hopefully in the postseason as well. So I actually think it worked out very, very well for the Rams, and they should be in a good spot with Puka Nacua. Now, the 5 games left on the Rams schedule after the bye week in Week 8 that I think are going to be the ones you want to circle on your calendar. First one, Week 10 at San Francisco. So there's a bitter, sour taste in Rams fans' mouths because of what happened against the 49ers earlier this season, where Mac Jones looked like Tom Brady. And that 49ers offense was dinking and dunking their way down the field. The Rams made mistakes. The Rams lost that game. Kyron Williams fumbled what should have put that game away at the goal line, and they have to live with the fact that they lost that one. They lost in overtime 26-23. They have an opportunity in Week 10 to avenge that loss. And even though the 49ers have been decimated by injuries this season, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, the list goes on, they've still been a competitive team that is in a position to make a run at that division. They're both tied right now. It's a tie for first place with the Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. And in the Week 5 TNF loss, they know that, hey, you can't take this 49ers team lightly, even in their current state. But the difference between this matchup is it's not going to be Mac Jones. Brock Purdy should be back by then. And we'll see. There is some talk, hey, can Mac Jones do Brock Purdy things? And there's not that big of a drop-off without him. That remains to be seen. But we know they're going to be going with Brock Purdy, and Purdy has had some success against the Rams. Kyle Shanahan scheming it up, so that'll be an interesting one to watch. That's going to be a game that could ultimately decide the division if the 49ers miraculously continue to win, even with a lot of their players out for either an extended period of time or the remainder of the season. Then there's Week 11 the following week against the Seattle Seahawks. So the Rams and the Seahawks, they still have both of their matchups remaining this year. The first one will come on Week 11. The Seahawks are right up there with the 49ers and the Rams, tied for the top of the NFC West right now. So it's going to be a battle. And the Seahawks are a team that is in a better spot health-wise. So we'll see. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I mean, he's a top 5 receiver. I mean, the best receivers in the NFL this year really have been JSN and Puka Nacua. Jamar Chase, since Burrow's gone down, and they found finally Flacco can do some things with him. He's really good. Justin Jefferson still does Justin Jefferson things, but Jackson Smith and Jigba, for all the guys this year that's emerged to that top tier, he's certainly made his claim to, hey, I'm sitting at that table with the best receivers in the National Football League. And then there's Week 12 versus Tampa Bay, one of my off-season picks to be a nationally televised game. So Tampa Bay, they started their season 5-2. Baker Mayfield was named as the trendy pick to win the MVP for the first part of the season. They're a team that you lose Mike Evans, you're losing guys, but still they're a team that wins games. And that could be very important because you're trying to finish with one of the best records in the NFC, and you're trying to lock up home field advantage for the rest of the year if you can. I mean, if you really go on a run, you can put yourself in a position where you're hosting playoff games, and that has to be the goal for the Rams. And then we talked about this one briefly, but Week 15 versus the Detroit Lions. I think this is one of the best matchups in the NFL. If you want to call it a rivalry, fine. I think it's a rivalry right now because of the personnel on both teams. Because you got Dan Campbell and Sean McVay. You've got Goff and Stafford, the history there. The Lions are a really good team. The 49ers are a team that used to be the matchup for the Rams, and that's always going to be your historic rival. But right now, as far as the juice, it is the Detroit Lions. It reminds me in baseball how the Dodgers and Giants, that's always going to be your historic all-time rival, and it doesn't matter which players and coaches are on both teams and managers. It's the Padres-Dodgers that has more juice, but once Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado are gone and the Padres are a bad team like they have been most of their existence, it's not going to feel like a rivalry. That's how I feel like the Detroit Lions and the Los Angeles Rams are. Because of the matchups, the fact they've matched up in the playoffs, the fact that they played each other so competitively, that it's just a really, really entertaining game, and it's going to be a really good test for the Rams, too. And the fact that they have that game in SoFi Stadium, it's going to be electric. And Detroit's also a good team this year. I mean, they're 5-2, lots of offensive weapons. There were a lot of questions about Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson, those guys departing for head coaching jobs, that the Lions' fall off was imminent. But Dan Campbell has maintained there, and Jared Goff has continued to play well. So they're a team. I'm going to say Brown, and they're a pretty electric offense. So that's going to be a fun one, and I think too a really good test towards the latter stages of the season, seeing how you match up with a team that you could play in the NFC Championship game or deep into the postseason, depending how their records are. So that's going to be a big one. And then we talked about Seattle earlier, but if Week 16 at Seattle is also going to be a big one if Seattle continues to win, because it's another division game. It comes late. It's on the road late in the season. So the Rams, they could be in a position where this game could have major NFC West implications on it. And also, if you lock up the NFC West early, then we expect the Rams to rest guys. So essentially, you're playing football late in the season, and the better you play, the better you set yourself up to be able to rest guys for the playoffs. We know that that's what Sean McVay, he wants to do. That's his style. And if you lose that game, then hopefully you're not having to play some desperate football late. So those are 5 games that I think you're looking at late in the season that can have a massive, massive impact on the remainder of the year. But coming up next, more Rams talk and a silver lining that Sean McVay found in Week 7, and Puka Nacua not playing against the Jags. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. This episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Matthew Stafford's no-look pass to Davante Adams. Another touchdown for Stafford. 5 touchdowns against the Jaguars. No interceptions. This is the first 5-touchdown game in an international game. Of course, the Rams beating the Jags in London. And Stafford's played like an MVP. 37 doesn't matter. Back issue doesn't matter. He has delivered this year and just had an incredible impact on this team. Just keeps moving the Rams forward. So when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Okay, here in our third segment, let's hear from Sean McVay. Some quotes from him when he was on the Rich Eisen show talking about the Rams and Puka Nacua missing Week 7 and how that helped the Rams. McVay said, quote, "I think what ended up happening is sometimes these things that are challenges can be blessings in disguise. What I mean by that is we're always going to have Puka when he's up as a focal point, but also, hey, let's not in the meantime lose sight of the fact that, hey, we've got Puka, we've got Davante, but we've got these other players that we want to take advantage of. We've got these great players that we want to take advantage of them." And I thought that was illustrated by being able to have multiple personnel groupings, multiple guys involved, and where they've got some plays where they could be made primarily in their progressions. Then it allows those other guys to be a little bit fresher. So interesting. Does Sean McVay watch Locked On Rams? Because I almost said that verbatim heading into last week. So good to see that me and McCain and McVay are on the same page. Should we call him S-Mac? I don't know. S-Mac _ LA. I like that. But, yep, it is a good thing for the Rams, and I'm very excited to see how those guys perform for the rest of the year, namely Terrence Ferguson. I mean, you always kind of just think the guy will take off after their first tutty, and I know this Rams team with those personnel groupings, going 13 personnel more and being able to do that, this Rams offense, that what gets me so excited is that they're 5-2, and I don't think you've came close to seeing the best version of this Rams offense. And that should be scary for teams around the league. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.